Hi guys. I'm sick, hence the sound of my voice. I'm also back in the pug suit because we're going to talk about grief a little more. In the last video, I talked about grief being taboo and shared some valuable little bits from Life is Goodbye, Life is Hello. I also said I was going to talk about what you can do about grief or how to grieve well, but I totally ran out of steam and didn't talk about it. Turns out I was coming down with whatever this is. Since you guys seemed to enjoy the last video, I thought I would do a part 2 and share the rest of the valuable little nuggets of wisdom, as well as some suggestions for things you can do to grieve well. So if you haven't seen part 1, I highly recommend you watch that one first. Okay? Let's get into it. In the last video, I talked about the numbing that can happen in grief. When a pain is too sudden and too great, the heart goes numb. If the injury is indeed severe, affecting a deep part of the self, the pain might be so intense that the natural protection system of the emotional self first anesthetizes the sufferer and then allows feelings to emerge only in a diffused way. But what comes after the numbing? When you start feeling. Now, of course, everyone is different, but in Dr. Bozarth's experience, she says that there are 4 distinct stages of grief that everyone goes through, and not necessarily in this order: fear, rage, guilt, and sadness. So let's talk about those. Fear in relation to grief can manifest in a few different ways. It can be a fear of expressing or experiencing your own feelings. And this is especially true if you are unskilled at managing your emotions or self-regulating. I feel attacked. This is true for me, and I'm sure it's something that a lot of you can relate to. But it's not that I fear painful or negative emotions. My fear is that if I allow just a drop of a painful emotion to come through, in this case, my overwhelming sadness and pain over losing Finn, if I allow just a drop of that, the whole dam is going to collapse and devastation will ensue and I will drown in my painful emotions. I don't trust myself to be able to pull myself out of it or stop the pain. I don't have skills. So I've told myself for a long time that stifling my painful emotions is my way of maintaining control over them. But as we heard in the last video, that isn't the case. If I am prejudiced against feeling, my fear of feeling will be strengthened, and I will become the victim of my own fear. Because I am so afraid of losing control, I will stifle myself and isolate myself from others. I will not lose control. I have already lost it. Fear will be in control of me. I feel attacked. In addition to fear of experiencing our grief, we might also have a fear of expressing our grief to others. Because grief and publicly grieving is taboo, we risk rejection from others if we do it. And that's just more pain. Not to mention the shame and guilt that's associated with rejection. When we sink into fear, we can become emotionally paralyzed. I may fear that others will ignore or betray me if I reveal my pain. I may withdraw like a turtle and never know that others are reaching out to me in care and concern. Or I may become openly hostile and aggressive to cover up my real fear of vulnerability and self-exposure. Also under the umbrella of fear lies anxiety, which Dr. Bozarth says is unfocused fear. I have had so much anxiety since Finn died. Her death intensified and amplified this massive fear I have, and Really, I think we all have, but aren't consciously aware of it on a day-to-day basis, which is the things I love most in this world that make my life worth living and that I truly believe I can't live without can and will be taken from me at some point. And there's nothing I can do to stop it. I mean, other than die first. And I know my anxiety isn't preventing the inevitable, but my brain sure is trying hard. In the wake of all this, I've been reminded of a spoken word song that was really popular when I was a kid called Everybody's Free to Wear Sunscreen. And I have been haunted by this one verse from it since childhood. Don't worry about the future. Or worry, but know that worrying is as effective as trying to solve an algebra equation by chewing bubble gum. The real troubles in your life are apt to be things that never crossed your worried mind, the kind that blindsides you at 4 p.m. on some idle Tuesday. It's also an eerie coincidence that Miss Finn died at 4 p.m. on some idle Wednesday. So what do we do about anxiety? Often in anxiety, you fail to breathe properly, either by holding your breath or by hyperventilating. Slow down and fully and gently receive and release each breath. To grieve well, you must breathe well. Simply attend, pay attention. When your breath is back, pray for strength to see and tune into your true feelings. Respect yourself in your feelings. Now, I can say she is correct there. Breathing exercises are a very effective tool for anxiety. One of my favorites is, I think it might be called box breathing. I could be wrong there. You breathe in to the count of 4, hold it for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. And you just do that over and over again. Next up, we have guilt, which Dr. Bozarth says is connected with the self-doubt that often motivates fear. She calls it the great torture of if. If only I had done this, or if only I didn't do that. If only. If only I'd been playing with Finn right then, instead of letting her sleep, which oftentimes triggered her seizures. If only I'd insisted she be put on anti-seizure medication, despite numerous vets assuring us that it wasn't time yet. If only I'd known more about seizures, maybe I could have pulled her out of it. The great torture of if. This kind of thinking only reinforces the destructive cycle of blame and shame. I think it was Brené Brown that said, guilt is I did something bad, shame is I am bad. For me, the cycle of blame and shame serves as a mix of self-flagellation and desperation to regain some sense of control and relieve my anxiety. I blame and punish myself while also telling myself the lie that I could have prevented it, that I had the power to, I just didn't exercise it. Let me know in the comments if that at all sounds familiar to you. So, how do we break out of the cycle of blame and shame? The cycle can be broken and compassion restored only if I remove my thinking from the realm of blame and shame and am adult enough to simply acknowledge the reality of what is. If, after a long illness, my dependent relative has finally died and I am free from the burden of worry and care, I may very well feel relief. This does not mean that I am a bad person or that I wished death to the person who has died. It simply means that a hard time is now over, and I naturally feel lightened and relieved. That is reality. There is no need for guilt or shame. Ooh, boy. I remember feeling a lot of guilt for feeling relief, in addition to tremendous sadness, when my grandpa died. By the time he died, he had been battling Parkinson's disease for over 20 years. And his quality of life had deteriorated so much that it wasn't even living. My heart would break every time I saw him or even thought of him. And I didn't visit him anywhere near enough in those final years because of how horrible it felt to me, which I still feel guilt about that. But by the time he died, he had been ready to go for quite a while. I was able to say goodbye to him via an email that my mom read to him because I was in Germany. And when I got that call that he was gone, I remember feeling so much relief and then being really disturbed that I'd felt that way. I've since made peace with that, but for years, I carried this sickening guilt for having felt relief and thought that there was something really wrong with me. Like, how dare I feel relieved that he's gone? But I've since realized that I was just relieved that he was finally free. Free from the confinement of a body that couldn't function anymore. And that he finally got what he'd been wanting for years.
Rage.
Dr. Bozarth says that rage is unfocused anger. Rather than stumble through her definition and the example she gives, I'm just going to read you the whole thing. Rage often comes with a sense of helplessness. I feel so powerless in this situation. Nothing I can do will change things. Yes, I'm enraged, and I will blame everyone and everything I can for what has happened. Rage is the diffused energy of unfocused anger. Something is terribly unfinished, unresolved. As focus sharpens and energy becomes directed, rage turns into anger and becomes effective. A woman once came to begin therapy with me because of unfocused rage that was troubling her. The night before our first session, she dreamed that she was lighting my cigarettes and very angry at both me and herself for doing this. Later in our session together, it came out that her father had died of emphysema as a result of cigarette smoking. Not only had he died, but he had had to move away from his daughter to a drier climate, and she had not seen him for 5 years at the time of his death. All her life she had felt abandoned by her father, and the last 5 years of his life were the unbearable climax of a long history of being left by him. Because her real anger at him for his self-destruction and her abandonment had been so unfocused and diffuse, she had transferred her rage and fear onto me, dreaming that I too would destroy myself and abandon her. Coming to terms with the source of her anger freed her to face new relationships with courage and faith. So, as of right now, I don't feel any rage in my grief over losing Miss Finn. So, I'll talk about a different example. In the last video, I mentioned that there's a spectrum of grief that we all experience pretty much every day throughout our lives. And that grief can arise from any kind of loss, from a loved one, a pet, a job, a marriage, a dream, so on and so forth. I can think of one example of when I felt rage in relation to grief. And to be honest, I still feel it, but it's not something I think about for many reasons. And that's the grief I feel over the loss of my childhood and the person I could have been had it been different. I used to be a person of faith, as they say, and When I started to feel grief over my own childhood, I felt rage at God for not protecting me, for allowing it to happen, for allowing my abuser to walk free while I have to live with the life-altering consequences of his actions every day of my life. Dr. Bozarth actually talks about people having anger or rage toward God following a loss. But rage is just diffused or unfocused anger. Rage is a sign that you feel powerless or helpless, and it's not very effective. Once you can focus that rage, assign it to the responsible party, whether it's another person, an illness, a circumstance, what have you, it then becomes anger, which is a healthy emotion, by the way, and can ultimately be expressed and worked through and moved past. And finally, there's sadness. Oh, sadness. Sadness is the final conflict between self-pity and compassion for oneself and others. It is not depression, for depression is a general state with no specific focus, and sadness is very focused. I am sad because of my loss, because I miss someone I loved, because I have experienced a personal diminishment. This type of highly focused sadness is the beginning of genuine self-acceptance. While self-pity wallows in sorrow, true compassion for oneself acknowledges the painful reality, the legitimacy of feeling responses, and the need for reaching out to others, and does not turn endlessly and futilely inward. My sadness can be my way out of myself, back to the human community. It can release the deadlock I have on myself, which is keeping me from accepting the love and compassion of others. But first, if I'm like most people, I must experience that deadlock. We all seem to go through it this way. It is the human way toward letting go and letting be. Oddly enough, I've never felt more human and connected to the rest of humanity than I have in Grieving Finn. I don't fully understand why that is yet, but there are a couple of things I've noticed. This is the first time I have ever allowed myself to freely feel and express what I'm feeling without any shame whatsoever. I have always ignored powerful emotions as a means of survival. I do it without even thinking about it. But for some reason, with losing Finn, I felt that to do that would be dishonoring her, minimizing or ignoring the depth of my love for her and the beautiful relationship we had and the tremendous gift she was in my life. Another reason, I think, why I've been feeling more human while grieving Finn is because having been totally unfamiliar with grief, not having anyone around me telling me what I should be feeling or when, I've still experienced grief the same way as everyone else. And for the very first time, I have felt like an instinctual need to reach out to others for support, to share with you guys what I'm going through. And in turn, I've been able to allow myself love and support in return that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to take in. That is totally new to me. My sadness can be my way out of myself, back to the human community. It can release the deadlock I have on myself, which is keeping me from accepting the love and compassion of others. My sadness can be my way out of myself, back to the human community. It can release the deadlock I have on myself, which is keeping me from accepting the love and compassion of others. So fear, rage, guilt, and sadness, all totally normal, healthy emotions to have in grief. But there is a type of fear, rage, guilt, and sadness that we need to watch out for. Human beings have a great capacity for complicating things, and we do this most effectively by creating secondary feelings. Feelings about feelings. In other words, we can work ourselves into feeling fearful, guilty, angry, and sad about our fear, guilt, anger, or sadness. Primary feelings may be necessary, but secondary feelings only get in the way. They will get you off the main track and delay the real issues. Say no immediately to any small voice inside you urging you toward wasting yourself in these pitfalls. Okay, so what can we do about our grief? How can grieving be a truly healing activity and not merely a destructive passion? At the very beginning of a grief process, become aware of ways in which you unnecessarily and self-destructively hurt yourself. For instance, when you hold yourself in, choke back tears, tighten facial and throat muscles, swallow down surging emotions, or suffocate feelings, it hurts. And it doesn't hurt good. It hurts bad. Oh, I know exactly that feeling. I'm sure you guys do too. So the following is from the section Expressing Grief and Taking Care of Yourself. Some practical suggestions. The essential treatment after sustaining the injury of a loss is that you express fully what the loss means to you. So how do you do that? I'm going to go through and just try to list some of the activities she recommends. Mind you, this is like more than 20 pages of material and nowhere near a complete, I don't know what the word is. Basically, read the book because I'm giving you just the basics here. But all right, some of the activities. Keep a journal. I once began a journal after many years away from the practice. It was a grief journal. The blank paper could reject none of my pain and was never bored by it the way other human beings might have been. Besides talking, let yourself cry as often as needed. Crying is what you do when you can't do anything else, before you are able to find other ways to express your grief. It's always better to cry in someone else's presence than to do so alone. In deep pain or genuine sorrow, this is true not because you need an audience, but because you need a witness to your pain, a witness in the religious sense. You need someone to testify to the validity of your feelings, to acknowledge them, and to say yes to the good work you are doing in expressing them. If you are a person who doesn't cry, or if you know you need to cry but can't for some reason in this particular situation, an outside stimulus for catharsis may be useful. A movie, play, piece of music, or book may trigger tears unexpectedly. If you begin crying for a character in a movie or a piece of literature, or weeping over a situation in a song, no matter how inane it may seem to you, let it be. Let yourself yield to the expressive emotion, recognizing that you have begun to weep for yourself, and thus have reached an important stage in self-healing. Weeping is only a stage. It won't last forever. You needn't be afraid to cry. Let yourself ask to be held. Let yourself be held. Though it may strike you as unnecessary, I want to remind you of the most essential bodily function in connection with grieving: breathing. Do your breathing exercises. Let yourself be cared for by others. Rely on friendships to carry you through hard times. Learn to express deeper levels of trust with your loved ones. It will be an honor for them to help you. Don't deprive them of this honor. Let yourself ask for help of all sorts, practical and spiritual, from your friends, family, coworkers, and skilled professionals. They are there for you, with gifts of time, wisdom, support, and love. They will understand if you can be honest about your pain because they too have had pain in life. Often they will be eager to help you in ways that others have helped them. Don't miss opportunities for developing and deepening relationships in critical moments of your life. Since your energy level may be quite low, your resources generally pulled inward for self-healing, don't push yourself physically or emotionally. It's perfectly all right to go on automatic for a while. During the times when automatic doesn't work for you, let others know what you're going through and ask for help. Or ask someone else to take over for you until you can gather your energy again for the task. While you are grieving, you are in the process of restoring your basic capacity for life. Create an image, either from memory or through fantasy, of a favorite, happy, and safe place, and take yourself there for mini retreats or vacations throughout the day, if only for a few seconds. If someone has died, write down all the good things you can remember about the person. Take care of someone or something outside of yourself, even early on. But keep it simple. Care for a plant or a pet, or do something nice for a friend or neighbor. Something in the universe needs you and depends on you. Have a professional massage, the restorative equivalent of 8 hours of good sleep. Love massages. Work outside. Do handcrafts if you already know them and find them relaxing. Visit the zoo. Spend time watching fish in an aquarium. Start an aquarium if you're so inclined. Hug trees. Listen to music. See your physician for help with any physical problems. See a psychotherapist for support if you have no one as an immediate witness to your pain and process, or if you feel or that you can't cope alone. See your pastor or another person who functions as a spiritual resource in your life. Avoid all forms of self-torture, self-punishment, and self-neglect. Avoid external stimuli that make you feel worse. Avoid heaviness. Choose only light, but not giddy, books, movies, plays, and television programs. Beware of smoking, drinking, eating too much, or using drugs. Give yourself small kindnesses and comforts, such as oil baths, special teas, or favorite comfort foods. Buy yourself something new. If you spend extra money on yourself right now, you're worth it. Don't be foolish in spending, though. If you can't afford a new car or a new silk outfit, don't buy one, or you'll hurt yourself more in the long run. Be generous, but realistic. Yes, I got the pug suit for that reason. This is not indulgence. It's therapy. And you are your own best therapist because you know best what helps you. If you feel stuck, do something new. If you feel empty, gradually fill the space in yourself with interests, people, projects. Value the grieving work you are doing. It's important. Enjoy good memories. Memories ground us in our humanity. Let go of the pain of the past and tell stories to help you reclaim the good. Allow yourself to talk out loud to whomever or whatever you have lost, describing what that person or thing meant to you and means to you now through the experience of loss. Finally, and most importantly, discover what helps you. No one else can do this for you. Pace yourself lovingly. Remember, this pain won't last forever. Be sensitive to your own timing. Don't push yourself ahead of your process, and don't let others push you because they are uncomfortable with your grief. Let it take as long as it takes. Don't hold on, either. Let the pain go when the time comes. Trust time. Time is on your side. Gradually, reclaim your power to create, to imagine, to perceive, to define, to believe. Regain yourself, your freedom to live again. The things I've shared with you make up probably not even 50% of this book, and I highly recommend all of you read it. Hopefully, the little bits that I've shared with you kind of give you an idea as to whether or not it would be helpful for you. Where am I at currently in my grief? Things are getting better. I'm not constantly in the grip of aching heartbreak and burdened with the heaviness of my grief. I'm not crying all the time. I still miss her with every fiber of my being, and I long for her, to hold her and gently squish her mug and wake up in the mornings to her curling up next to me and resting her mug on my arm, to laugh at all of the hilarious things she did, and to feel overwhelming love and adoration for her. But it no longer feels like I'm in an airplane at cruising altitude with the doors open. It no longer feels like something about the world is so fundamentally wrong that I can't ever be normal again. And as much as I hate it and hate to admit it, I'm getting used to it. Something that has been helping me quite a bit is that we've decided to get another pug. We'd been talking about getting a second pug for years, and we were already planning to do so this year. We just didn't expect Miss Finn to die first. I know that I can never replace Finn, and that nothing, not even another pug, could serve as a substitute for her. And I wouldn't even want that anyway. What we had was beautiful, and she will always have a gigantic piece of my heart. But I see this new pug as a seed that can be planted in my heart that will grow into something else that is beautiful and fruitful and enriches my life. And our new pug was actually born last night. I can feel some happiness and excitement stirring underneath the rubble of my grief over Finn. And I guess that's life. Loving and letting go. Over and over and over again. I think that concludes this little series on grief. I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments. What has grief been like for you? What are some things that have helped you? How long did it take for you to feel at least somewhat normal again? We all need to hear that the pain won't last forever. As always, if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for me, please leave them in the comments and I will respond to them. If you liked this video or found it helpful in any way, please consider liking it. It helps me out a lot. And if you want to join us in being one of the nice people who talk about things like this, don't forget to subscribe before you go. This is the point where I would say goodbye, Finn. So here's a video of her instead. Hi. Okay, bye.
How it's supposed to feel.